So in this video, we're going to continue with the conversation of light and dark part two and why it's important, what it means, and things like that. So some interesting takeaways from our last video that I want to reiterate and kind of stress is the dialectic of appearances and essences, and how some of these essences can be concealed because they exist within the shadow side of a person's lived experience. Some other dialectical relationships that ultimately emerge exist, such as, but are not limited to, light and dark, masculine and feminine, anima and animus, right? Inner and outer elements. And the reason why this is important, especially for women, is to demonstrate how, for gay people, the twin flame archetype is ultimately created. Because it is the dark aspects of the lived person that create that understanding of the inner being. And the inner being is the twin flame archetype. It reveals the archetype of la pareja. So, for a man who is attracted to gender nuanced men, it is the inner animation of who they are and how they are shaped as a person that creates the archetype of la pareja. Another thing that this helps us to understand from the perspective of Marxian ecology and consciousness is how culture is not something that, you know, is earned. It's something that happens to you. Culture ultimately comes from within. And I feel like within Black consciousness, within the Black community, this idea of culture has always been looked at from a capitalistic mindset, and hip hop has ultimately lost the plot a little bit because the true aspect of people who embody Black culture are not the rich. The true aspect of people who embody culture are the people that touch earth. So, as working class people within this lived experience, within this historical context, we are the culture. And we are ultimately the counterculture as well, because culture comes from within your lived experience as a person. Another thing that I would like to talk about and demonstrate is how men and women are ultimately different. Because what a man is going to do is a man is going to ascribe meaning to his life. A man will get the wealth, the amenities, the lifestyle, and the storehouse, his for his walls, right? And a woman or a person that has the feminine principle, they inscribe meaning to their lived worlds based off of these darker components, the inner being of the person. So it is the inner being that makes you lit as a woman. It is the inner being that makes you lit as a gender nuanced man or as a trans woman. With respect to women, this inner being is your aflorencia, la herencia la madre, that the three major components, or rather the three major archetypal contents that kind of construct the lived experience of a woman is ultimately the archetype of the Madonna, right? The reflection of the Divine Mother, the archetype of Little Red Riding Hood, right? And the archetype of the Little Red Hen. Carl Jung also talked about this idea of making the dark conscious. So, what happens is this is ultimately how culture is then shaped and created because you are then able to kindle a little bit of light in the darker aspects of who a person is and how they ultimately come to be, and how this ultimately shapes their identity as a person.